Number 8. Chernobylite. In 1986, one of the worst nuclear disasters in history happened at a nuclear power plant in Ukraine. Decades later, in July 2021, a video game inspired by the tragedy was released on Microsoft Windows. Chernobylite takes heavy inspiration from the fallout of the Chernobyl incident. After a flaw in the reactor design caused a massive explosion and fires to break out, radioactive material was exposed. This caused the deaths of countless people who were in nearby cities in the surrounding area of Chernobyl. They were essentially poisoned by radioactive material that had been released into the air. Over 350,000 people had to be moved from their homes afterward. Many of them left everything they knew and loved behind since they'd already been contaminated. This included pets, heirlooms, and valuables. Thyroid cancer dramatically increased in Ukraine and Russia between 1986 and 2004, so no one knows the exact number of people who lost their lives as a direct result of the Chernobyl meltdown. That's what really happened in real life, but the game's a bit different. As a player in Chernobylite, you mainly explore the Chernobyl exclusion zone as Igor Kiminuk, a physicist who worked in the power plant. This area was officially designated as toxic after the disaster. It encompasses an 18-mile circle centered around the incident site. In the game, Igor goes back to the Chernobyl exclusion zone after having vivid nightmares of his fiancée, Tatiana, who went missing after the blast. He decides to go back to the zone in order to look for clues on why Tatiana disappeared. We'll avoid spoilers in case you want to play the game for yourself, but just know it's not for the faint of heart. Enemies consist of military officials and people who were poisoned by radioactive debris called stalkers. It's an interesting game and worth playing, if you're not afraid of radiation, that is. Number 7. Outlast 2. If you've ever been fascinated by cult mentality, then you might be interested in the 2017 title, Outlast 2. The first game was an instant hit among fans of the horror genre, and the second iteration in the series did not disappoint. So what exactly is Outlast 2 about? Well, you play as a journalist named Blake Langerman. Together with your wife Lynn, you've been investigating a mysterious murder case. While looking for clues, you stumble upon a horrifying den of fanatical cult members who'll do anything for their leader, Sullivan Noth. The original game was full of heavy jump scares, chase scenes, and more to get players' hearts pumping. And while Outlast 2 follows a new story, it stays true to its origins. The developers, Red Barrels, took a lot of inspiration from real cults like Jonestown, Heaven's Gate, and the Order of the Solar Temple. In 1978, over 900 members of the Jonestown commune in Guyana took their lives in one of the biggest mass suicides in history. It's estimated that about 300 of those lost were children under 17 years old. But why in the world did they do it? Those who lived in the commune were members of the People's Temple cult, which was run by the deceptively charismatic and evil Jim Jones. He tricked his followers into thinking he had otherworldly healing and mind-reading abilities. With all that power, Jones would often beat, assault, and blackmail those in his faith into giving him what he wanted. Eventually, news organizations and police started asking questions about what was happening in Jonestown. A congressman from the States named Leo Ryan even visited the site after dark rumors of abuse started circulating. As he left, some cult members attacked him. This resulted in the deaths of 5 people. Not long after, Jones put out an order for his followers to enact a revolutionary suicide. They laced Kool-Aid with cyanide and other poisonous drugs before drinking it. With such heavy inspiration for Outlast 2, it's no wonder why people find it deeply disturbing. Still, if you enjoy cult fiction, you might want to check this game out. Number 6. Five Nights at Freddy's. Since its release in August 2014, the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise has quickly become one of the most beloved and talked about game series of all time. Countless theories about hidden lore have been discussed over the years as 9 titles debuted. They're all centered on creepy animatronics that come to life at night. While little has been fully confirmed by the game's creator, Scott Cawthon, it's widely accepted that the machines are being controlled by the spirits of child murder victims. By digging through hours of gameplay footage, theorists claim that one of the men who helped build the animatronics, William Afton, is being tormented for his crimes through his inventions. He apparently took the lives of kids that visited Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. We won't get too deep into the lore because that could literally take hours, but just know there's a lot, and it's pretty gruesome. It's even worse when you realize the games were inspired by reality. In December 1993, 4 Chuck E. Cheese workers in Colorado lost their lives. They were targeted by a former employee, a young man named Nathan Dunlap. The 19-year-old was so angry after being fired months before that he decided to get revenge on his old co-workers. At around 9 p.m. on the day of the shooting, he went to the arcade and hid in the bathroom. Nathan stayed there until Chuck E. Cheese closed before coming out with a pistol. After killing 4 people, he immediately ran out of the crime scene with cash and stolen game tokens. Authorities arrested the killer, and he was given the death penalty. On March 23, 2020, the governor of Colorado officially repealed the severe punishment, and Nathan's sentence was reduced to life in prison. While the Five Nights at Freddy's games don't follow this tragedy exactly, they were heavily inspired by the 1993 shootings. Number 5. Resident Evil Village. When Resident Evil Village was being teased before its official release in 2021, people online were head over heels in love with one of the game's antagonists, Lady Dimitrescu. We can hardly blame them either. Standing over 9 feet tall, the vampiric villain wears a long white dress and large black hat. Her piercing yellow eyes inspire not just fear in players, but passion as well. For some time, it was a running joke in the gaming community that people wanted Dimitrescu to step on them. That holds true for some concerning individuals, but where did the developers behind Resident Evil Village get their inspiration for the character? Well, to get our answer, we'll have to travel back to 16th century Hungary. One of the most powerful noblewomen of that era was the infamous Countess Elizabeth Bathory. She had close relationships with influential figures like the Prince of Transylvania and Poland's king. But behind her wealth, Elizabeth was hiding a dark secret. Some claim she not only inspired Lady Dimitrescu's creation, but the vampire genre as a whole. The Countess was accused of unspeakable crimes in the year 1610, which forced her to stay locked up in Castle Chastise until she passed away. After her husband died in the war, Elizabeth's power grew. She was now in charge of several estates and countless servants, who she allegedly subjected to severe torture. Many claim that her young female servants were often the main targets of abuse. There are many accounts of what she did to them, and they're all truly awful. It's said that she burnt their skin, cut off their genitals, jammed needles under their fingernails, and more. The Countess was also accused of killing virgins and bathing in their blood to maintain a youthful complexion. She supposedly did this to both servants and minor noblewomen who came to her estate for guidance. While none of her actions have been confirmed by theorists, the stories and legends have inspired many, including those who worked on Resident Evil Village. Have you played Resident Evil Village? Let us know in the comments down below. If you like the video so far, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Number 4. The Exorcist Legion. The Exorcist Legion drew its inspiration from the cult classic horror film The Exorcist. The virtual reality game features a detective as they try to solve some strange murder cases and run into more than they bargained for. Both the horror title and movie it references are actually based on a real-life incident that occurred in Cottage City, Maryland in 1949. A young boy who's been identified as Roland Doe showed a growing interest in the occult. He'd grown up in a religious family, but his aunt gave him a Ouija board to explore his curiosity. Not long after, she died, and Roland's family started noticing unexplainable things happening in their house. They say objects were vibrating and floating, and William Peter Blatty, who wrote a book on the situation, claims it was the beginning stages of demonic possession starting to show. While the film and video game take this story and run wild with it, the reality of the haunt was likely jarring to Roland's family. The Exorcist Legion's creators say their game also takes heavy inspiration from religious and biblical themes. With the combination of demonic possession and zealotry, the title easily evokes fear out of the toughest players, especially in the virtual reality setting. Now that you've heard a little bit about the game, do you think you could handle it? Number 3. Neverending Nightmares. In this 2014 survival horror title, players control a character named Thomas who seems to be stuck in a loop of terrible nightmares. As the game progresses, Thomas lives through a dream, only to wake up in something more horrible. The unsettling imagery depicted in the story is made worse by the eerie 2D graphic art style. The scariest part of Neverending Nightmares is that its creator, Matt Gilgenbach, based the game on his personal experience with mental illness. Gilgenbach suffered from severe OCD and depression and was a victim of self-harm. In an interview before the title's official release, he mentioned this, saying, "I suffered very badly from 2001 to 2003, and everything felt completely bleak and hopeless." The man spoke about how difficult it was to do ordinary tasks most people take for granted, like getting up in the morning. He said he wanted to mimic this experience of sheer despair in his game. The themes explored in Neverending Nightmares aren't fantastical monsters or world-ending plagues, but the horrors a person's own mind can put them through. We won't spoil anything for anyone interested in playing, but this title is truly a personal experience for each player that you should see for yourself. Be careful though, don't get too caught up in the nightmare, or else you might never get out. Number 2. GÉVAUDAN. As a nominee for the Best Student Award for Games, young developers Louis Hilaire and Guillaume Leclerc are working to bring GÉVAUDAN 1851 to gamers everywhere. The story focuses on a secluded French town during the 19th century. There seems to be something strange going on in the town for players to discover. With an art style reminiscent of Impressionist painters, the game looks to history as its source material. In 1760, 90 years before the time period of the game, a mysterious beast terrorized the French Gévaudan province. No one knew what was responsible for the hundreds of attacks. Some described the creature as some kind of wolf hybrid with incredible power. It's believed that it was the size of a horse with thin, pointed ears, an extremely long, ragged tail, and a large head. While we aren't exactly sure what the beast looked like, one thing was certain. Well over 100 people lost their lives to those attacks. The problem got so bad that King Louis XV had to step in and take action. So in response, he sent some troops and a captain to the province to kill the monster. In the end, while many claim to have slayed the monster themselves, the credit was largely given to a simple French hunter known as Jean Chastel. GÉVAUDAN 1851 will take players to the scene of this tragedy and let them see for themselves if the beast is truly dead. Number 1. Fatal Frame. This title, which was originally released on the PlayStation 2 console on December 13, 2001, quickly became a favorite to horror fans. Fatal Frame follows the story of a young girl named Miku who's looking for her missing brother in 1986. She travels to the last place she knew he went, Himuro Mansion. While there, Miku finds strange clues hinting that something sinister is going on within the estate. Similarly to Neverending Nightmares, the director of Fatal Frame took inspiration from his own dark dreams and personal experiences with what he believed were supernatural beings. The setting is allegedly inspired by a real location in Japan, a large mansion that's believed to lie somewhere outside of Tokyo. Not much is known about the site, other than that a strange ritual was conducted there, similar to one that's done in the game. It's referred to as the Strangling Ritual, and it's a dark ceremony conducted by wayward members of the Shinto faith. It involves taking a young girl, raising her in complete isolation from outside influences, and sacrificing her. While a ritual is shown in Fatal Frame, there's a key difference between fiction and reality. In the game, a sacrifice is made to keep spirits and ghosts happy while the real ritual is done to avoid bad luck. Either way, it's seriously messed up. If you want to discover more about the Strangling Ritual, we'd suggest you play Fatal Frame, or the upcoming sequel that comes out later this year, Fatal Frame: Mask of the Lunar Eclipse. Which of these games would you most like to try out yourself? Let us know in the comments down below. We love hearing from our awesome viewers. If you're new to the channel and enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to see more. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Bad Badger.